Karmelo Anthony, and how he has conservatives just upset, riled, and mainly black conservatives. We're gonna talk about all conservatives, but I want to talk about black conservatives as well because what I'm seeing is truly amazing. But before we get into it, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. This is gonna be an interesting topic, and I may go deeper and do a panel. If y'all want me to, let me know. Uh, yeah, let's get into it. So, backstory for those of you who haven't been paying attention: Karmelo Anthony, a 17-year-old, allegedly had stabbed another 17-year-old. I think his name was Austin Metcalf. This happened in the DFW area, Frisco, and he died. He died, and you know, there's been a lot of talk about what happened and what hasn't happened, and I don't think that people are actually reading the facts as we know them now. So I'm going to lay out a timeline, and I'm going to lay out the scenario as I understand it based on the police reports that I've read. So essentially, it was a rainy day, and there was a track and field event going on a rainy day. And Karmelo Anthony, a young 17-year-old black kid, decided to go sit under the tent of another school. And I guess in the track and field world, that's a no-no. That's like, we got to go over there and try to jump you type of stuff, right? So he went over there, sat under the tent, minded his own business on his phone. The people, I guess Austin and his brother and some other people or whatever, they started telling him he had to move. And we don't know how it was said. We don't know what happened in that conversation, just that they were telling him he has to move. And that conversation escalated to where Karmelo Anthony felt threatened because he said, hit me and see what happens. So then the victim, Austin Metcalf, went over there, pushed him based on the reports, and then grabbed him, and then he saw what happened. And Karmelo Anthony took out a knife and ended up unaliving him. And so that's pretty much how it went down based on the reports. Now, what I want to talk about is how conservatives have switched up. I want to talk about how conservatives have switched up. We got Emmett in the building. We got Sean in the building. What up, y'all? Make sure you hit the like button. I want to talk about how conservatives have switched up. Now, before y'all start saying, you must be a liberal, you're a snowflake, here y'all go again defending black people over nothing. I actually lean more conservative. I'm an independent, but I lean more conservative. So, get that out the way. Disclaimer. So, I want to talk about how conservatives have switched up, because prior to this happening, there were no conservatives that were alive that were this up in arms about someone defending themselves. As a matter of fact, we've seen conservatives over and over and over again talk about how guns should still be allowed even though there's school shootings, and how you have the right to bear arms and you have the right to defend yourself. We've heard conservatives say that teachers should have guns in schools. We've had conservatives say that, even if a gun isn't allowed somewhere, if you're in danger or something happens and you shoot that gun at somebody and kill them, you should not be prosecuted. That happened in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, I believe, where he was not supposed to have that gun because he was underage, and there was a big dispute about that. And conservatives were saying, well, it's a good thing he had it, because if he didn't, see what would have happened. See what would have happened. So this is not legal advice. This is not legal advice. What I'm saying, though, is this. It seems like there's a double standard when it comes to conservatives that I do not like. And that double standard is, on one hand, we believe in the right to bear arms. We believe that if someone puts their hands on you, you have the right to defend yourself. They come up with the slogan, F around and find out. And they're always talking about how somebody does this to me, I'm going to shoot them with my gun. Somebody does this to me, I got my gun on me. They are better to have it on you than not have it on you. They're guns, guns, guns. I'm going to do this. Come take my guns. But then when there's a case, and I'm not even saying that the kid should have been stabbed, but what I find interesting, when there's a case where someone was clearly assaulted before they got stabbed, based on all the reports, he was grabbed. You cannot just grab somebody. You cannot just push somebody. That's assault. and you cannot threaten somebody. So when somebody is threatened and then someone physically grabs them, now all of a sudden we don't know what self-defense is anymore. We don't know what self-defense is anymore. So my question is, why are we allowed to sit here and say that we believe in the right to bear arms, we believe in self-defense, we believe in stand your ground, but then when someone is defending themselves, we want to throw that out the window altogether? Because I haven't seen reasonable conversations. I think a reasonable conversation was the kid overreacted and stabbed somebody. But that's not the conversation that's being had, no. The conversation that's being had is Karmelo Anthony is a monster. He went there with a knife to provoke somebody so that he could stab them. That's what conservatives are saying. And I just have questions about that, because the moral of the story for me is that that kid would still be alive if he didn't put his hands on him. Again, not justifying him being stabbed, but I think it's a whole different world when you put your hands on somebody. It's a whole different world when you put your hands on somebody. And my question is this, because I see a lot of people talking about, well, why would you bring a knife to school? Why would you bring a knife to school? But let me ask you this. Let's just do a little thought experiment. If you can't bring a knife, I'm assuming you can't bring, a firearm to these school events, right? You can't bring a firearm to these school events. I'm going to assume that if you can't bring a knife, you can't bring a firearm. All right. Makes sense. Let's say at this track meet, for whatever reason, someone went crazy. There was someone that went crazy and started trying to shoot people at this event. Let's just say somebody went crazy. And that there was another person in the stands or whatever who had a firearm on them. And they weren't going crazy, but they were defending the people there against the person that went crazy with the firearm. Conservatives would be clapping. Well, that's a good thing he brought that weapon. Because if he didn't bring that weapon, look what would have happened. Look what would happen. They're always saying, it's not the weapon, it's the person with the weapon. The weapon can't do nothing, it's the person with the... We all know that would have happened. If someone crazy was at that event and they started shooting people and there was somebody else who had a gun there illegally, because you can't have the gun on the school grounds, they would be a hero. They would be a hero. So I just don't like the inconsistencies. Someone said, nah, do you hear yourself? You too worried about conservatives and forgotten your own morals as a human. No, I'm not worried about conservatives. I just want to point out the hypocrisy. I want to point out the hypocrisy, and I want to ask a question. Why is there a double standard? Why is there a double standard? Because all I've heard is this kid is a monster. This kid is, a criminal, and we don't even know all the facts at this point. And to sit there and pretend, to just ignore the fact that he put his hands on somebody first, you lost me. If we can't even address that, if you would just blow past that, and people are like, well, if someone puts their hands on you, you should do exactly back to them what they're doing to you. Really? Really? All these people talking about, if someone breaks in my house, I'm going to shoot them. Why don't you go break in their house then? Why don't you go break back into their house if you're going to do what they do to you? Well, if someone's trying to stab you, why don't you go to your kitchen or whatever and get a knife and try to... No. That's not really, to me, that's not how self-defense really works. In the moment you make decisions, again, not justifying him being stabbed. But what I am saying is that we cannot skip over the fact that Austin Metcalf allegedly put his hands on him first. And we can't pretend that that's the same, because this is what they were trying to say in the beginning. They just got in an altercation and Karmelo Anthony just went over there and stabbed him. No, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. Someone said, are you hood? Would you kill someone over a minor altercation? This is why I say it's never a good idea to put your hands on somebody unless you want to risk your life. You know, we can all sit here and say what we would have done in certain situations and stuff like that. And it's interesting because these are the same people that talk about how hard cops' jobs are because they have split seconds to make decisions. And sometimes they get those decisions wrong, but you have grace for them. Oh, they got a tough job. They have to make split-second decisions. They don't know if that was a phone or a gun. They don't know what your intentions are, so they have to protect themselves. But when it comes to somebody else, now all of a sudden, we can't recognize that. Now all of a sudden, it's just they're an animal. I agree. You have to keep your hands to yourself. Again, I'm not saying he should have been stabbed, but what I am saying is that for you to have the nerve to go try to physically move somebody from under a tent when it's raining, who do you think you are? Like, that's my question. Who do you think, like, you have to be comfortable. You have to have done this before. For you to sit there and think that you can just put your hands on somebody because they're not moving from under a tent, that's not even your tent. You didn't pay for it. You just go to this school. You just go to this school. Go get a teacher. Go get an adult. Go get security if they got it. But I don't know what world we're growing up in where we think we could just put hands on somebody and nothing happens. Go get an adult. Because for me, if you're going to put your hands on somebody, you have to be ready for the consequences. You have to be ready for the consequences. Someone said, the good news is this guy is all over the place trying to justify the insanity. Imagine the jury. They're going to see through the lies too. I'm not all over the place. I'm sticking right to the point. Jury will grant him not guilty. Totally true. That's why I keep a steak knife on me. Stupid. Good morning from England. How are you? I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. But let me know what y'all think in the comment section, because what I really want to talk about is why the switch up. Why this, for a country that loves guns, that loves self-defense, that loves the right to bear arms, why the switch up? Why can't we even acknowledge that when you put your hands on somebody, you open yourself up for great harm? You open yourself up for great harm. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that grew up and that was taught somebody could talk all they want, but it's different when you put your hands on them. It's different when you put your hands on them. I don't know. I always thought there was a difference between talking and putting your hands on somebody. Someone said, do you think the USA is a safe country to live in? I think it has its good and bad places. I think for the most part, if you mind your own business, go about your day, try to be the best person you can be, focus on you and your community and the people that are around you and stuff like that, you'll be pretty good. Of course, there's going to be areas that are more dangerous no matter what you do. Stay away from those areas. But, I think there's enough opportunity and there's enough places where you can go to where you could get you and your family in a safe environment and thrive. Darren Edwards said, your argument is ludicrous. Ask to leave, won't, says before anything has happened, touch me, see what happens. That's provocation. Are you stand your ground ain't gonna work. Well, first of all, and this is what I'm talking about right here. Nobody says, touch me and see what happens if somebody hasn't threatened them or done something already, right? Like if Austin felt confident enough to go grab somebody that he does not know, where they're already saying they saw him reaching in his bag before he was ever even touched. You see somebody reaching in their bag after you done told them to move and probably threatened them and probably said that you were going to go over there and move them if they don't move. And they said, make me. or something like that, and they touch me and see what happens, that's usually something that's said after somebody says, I'll make you move, or I'll go over there and do this and do that. But I get it. He's black, right? So we can't give him that grace. We can't put it in context that makes sense. We just have to say, well, he just randomly said, touch me and see what happens. But even if he did say that, even if he said, touch me and see what happens, why would you go over there and put your hands on him? Why would you go over there and put your hands on him? You still don't have the right to put your hands on somebody because someone said, touch me and see what happens. It's that simple. Someone said, Mr. Cringe locked in said, I mean, nothing is predictable. You might die because of a sudden shootout that may happen anywhere in that country. Yeah, that can happen anywhere. I'm just really interested why the switch up all of a sudden. Because a lot of these people, depending on the situation that's going on, we'll see them get online and now they're pro America and pro self-defense, and you're going to have to come take my weapons from me and all this other stuff. But then when a situation happens that goes against their narrative, now all of a sudden we don't believe in self-defense. Now all of a sudden we don't believe in due process. Now all of a sudden we don't believe someone is innocent until proven guilty. We don't believe none of that. It's a joke. Sean says, that's white privilege too. The guy that he can feel he can put hands on him because his pride was threatened. And another thing is this, that's a good point. Pride was threatened, but I'm interested to see, because from what I'm reading and hearing, these weren't just no regular 17-year-olds, right? The boys of Frisco, the twins. These weren't no regular these were 220-pound 17-year-olds. 220-pound 17-year-olds. Now, hey, I get it. Some people are scared to fight. But you can make the case. I don't know how much Karmelo Anthony weigh. I don't know any of that. But some people, if you got a good 50, 60 pounds on them, 220, and you maybe 150, 160, maybe 140, I don't know. There could be hey, I was scared. You got these two dudes, 220. I don't want no 220 dude grabbing me. Shoot. Let somebody who's 220 pounds come grab you. What are you going to do? Let somebody who's 220 pounds come grab you. What are you going to do? And all these people, he should just fight him. What happened to fighting? What happened to fighting? We used to fight, and y'all used to fight. Didn't y'all come over here and exterminate the Native Americans? Y'all didn't do that with your fist. Y'all didn't put no boxing gloves on to fight the Native Americans. Where is this lie? Y'all didn't enslave black people with the fist. Y'all use guns, dogs, all that. So this narrative that, y'all ain't never used weapons and stuff. No. It's just that now there's a narrative and you're going to run with it and throw out all the things that you advocate for before this story came up. Someone said, what the F are you talking about? You got to listen. You got to pay attention. What I'm saying is there are people that are out here saying, why didn't he just fight him? What happened to fighting? That's never been the American way. That's a lie. Americans have never fought. Americans are the most gun-crazy people on the face of the earth, and they are waiting to do something with them weapons. We don't have all these guns and all these firearms because we're ready to fight with somebody. Most Americans are overweight, unhealthy, pilled up with multiple conditions, mental and physical, they not fighting nobody. We not a fighting culture. Someone said, what the hell, bro? You were not alive back then. That doesn't mean I don't know what happened. Doesn't mean I don't know what happened. Someone said, in London, we use mostly hands. I heard over there they be stabbing people. I don't know. I heard over there in London they be stabbing people. Let me know. Let me know. If you are in the stream right now, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's get them likes up, please. Let me know in the comment section what y'all think. Let me know in the comment section what y'all think. Because here's my thing, right? I watched the media over the last 4 or 5 years, and then you see liberals, everything's racist, everything is, LGBTQ, you have to be for this, you're homophobic that, and then it's just extreme on this side. And it's like, okay, I gotta look at things differently. But then you get over here and you start consuming conservative content, and then you start agreeing with points, and you're like, well, maybe they're more impartial, maybe they're more logical. But then when something happens, you see that they're not just thinking logical. They're gonna toe the party lines, and they're gonna go with whatever the conservative thought is. And you already know what most 99% of these people are gonna say, because they're not thinking freely. They're not thinking freely. So it's not really about waiting for the evidence to come out. They don't really care about that, just like liberals don't care about that. Right? Just like you hear when liberals will sit there and say, we accept everybody. You don't even, if you're a man and you want to be a woman, we'll accept you. Except if you're a conservative, now we don't accept you. Regardless of how good of a person you are, all that stuff. So I'm an independent. So I give smoke when I see smoke, and I don't have an alliance to any of these parties and stuff like that. I'm more Pan-Africanist than anything, so I'm good. Yep, someone said nothing but smoke screens. The division is by design. Exactly. Someone says, so Fitz, how often did you have a steak knife in school? Okay, great question. Well, I didn't have a steak knife because I wasn't going to take the only knife that we had to school. But, I had a little pocket knife. I had a pocket knife, and there were people around me that had weapons on them, guns, knives, things like that. I think a better question would be, if I was trying to be more neutral and impartial, I would say, this kid lives in Frisco. Well, I think I'm assuming he lives in Frisco because he went to a Frisco school. Now, Frisco, Texas is one of the safest places, not only in Texas, but in the United States. So I think a more critical question would be, why would someone who lives in one of the safest areas in the United States feel the need to bring a knife to school? Which not even a school, but a school event. Now, we can go with the easy answer and say, well, he's a criminal and he was just waiting to stab somebody, right? He brought that knife that day to stab somebody. Here's the problem that I see with that argument, though, honestly. There are reports saying that he's actually gotten in trouble for having a knife before. Now, the issue that I have with the people saying he brought that knife there to stab him was, if he always carries that knife on him, you can't make the argument that he brought the knife that day to stab somebody because he always has it on him. So there goes the premeditation part. Because if he always has the knife on him and he carries around with him, how can you say that he specifically chose this day to bring this knife to go start something with this person if he always carries the knife? That's just a narrative being made up so that they can justify saying, well, he brought that knife that day so he could stab somebody. But if he's gotten in trouble for bringing a knife before, that should tell you that he probably carries this knife more often than just today. So if he carries this knife more often than today, how can you say that he was specifically carrying that knife on that day to go stab him? It don't make sense to me. That don't make sense to me. I could see if he never carried a knife, and then on this day he was packing his backpack and he's like, you know what? Today's the day. Let me go get that steak knife. But if he always carries a knife, how can you say that it was premeditated that day if he usually does it? That don't make sense to me. Someone said, Alton Bryce said, he is a criminal. He has hatred in his heart and a whole lot of anger. And doesn't matter if he used a knife, a car, or a garage, or a garbage bag. He is evil and he will be dealt with, period. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about him having hatred in his heart. And let's get to that point, because the reports that I'm reading say that it was raining outside that day. And we can go and look at the weather, right? Go look at the weather on that day and check for yourself if it was raining in Frisco, Texas. But it's raining that day, right? So imagine you're outside and it's raining. What are you going to try to do? You're going to try to get where it's dry, where you're not getting hit by the rain, right? So it would make sense that you'd go sit under a tent if it's raining. So we're talking about anger, right? And having hatred in your heart. Why would you even try to kick somebody out from under a tent, especially if there's room, when you see that it's raining, and if they get kicked out, they're going to be in the rain? Why not be a good person? Why not be kind? Why not say, you know what, I wouldn't want to sit in the rain, and this isn't my tent anyways. This is the school's tent. Why not just be kind? Why not be a kind person and let somebody sit under a tent if it's raining? Why not do that? Someone said because he was there to take stuff. Oh yeah, he was there. That another assumption. He was there to take stuff. People ignore the fact that this kid, based on the reports, 3.7 GPA, great athlete, never been in trouble before. Where are we getting these ideas that he was there to hurt somebody? Where are we getting these ideas? Why make those up? Where are we getting those ideas from? People are just pulling those out of thin air. He was there to hurt somebody. Where are you getting that? What makes you believe that? Is it his skin color? Let's be real. Because you can't give me, oh, he had a knife, so he was there to hurt somebody. No. Because if he always carries the knife on him, you're saying he's trying to hurt somebody every day? If that's the case, how come he don't have any priors? Right, and I don't want to pull the race card, but that's the only thing I can think of why y'all keep saying he was there for bad intentions. Because there's nothing about his prior history, he has no prior criminal record. He has a 3.7 GPA. He lives in Frisco, a wealthy place with a good education system, from what I hear, in a fairly safe place. So where are we getting that he's this criminal? What's leading you to believe that? What's leading you to believe that? He brought a knife to a school event. Okay, he brought a knife to a school event. Why would he do that? We have to think critically. Why would he do that? Outside, like if you had to give him grace, right? If you just had to give him grace, you just had to look at him as a human being and say, let me give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say, and I go back to this. Okay, he brought a knife to a school event. He didn't just randomly get up and start stabbing nobody. Someone put their hands on him after they initiated a conversation about a tent that's not theirs, and they can see that it's raining outside. I'll tell you what it was. They saw somebody, they wanted him out the tent, and they tried to get him out the tent using physical force. It didn't work. They were likely used to being able to do that, and it didn't go over well this time. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I don't like it. I think the whole situation is a tragedy all around. But we cannot sit here and pretend, like the stories were saying initially, that Austin Metcalf was just sitting there and somebody walked up and stabbed him. No. There was something that happened, and that something was he tried to physically move somebody, which could be considered kidnapping, could be considered assault, could be considered battery. If we were just looking at this on, like, if he didn't get stabbed that day, he could be in jail. Someone said coward couldn't throw hands. Coward couldn't throw hands. Coward couldn't throw hands. So he's a coward. All right. Let's say he is a coward. Why would you want to pick on a coward? Why would you want to pick on a coward? If this is a coward, what is the other person? Brave? Are they brave for picking on a coward? Did they think he was a coward? Probably. Someone said he's a gangbanger. He said, touch me and see what happens. Now let's think logically again. Let's think logically. Because all these people talking about throwing hands, right? When you were about to throw hands, what was usually said? Touch me and see what happens. So obviously there was some type of conversation happening before that was said. Obviously there was some type of conversation. Right? Like that's like the cops. They say freeze and then they shoot somebody. Right? But to make it seem like there was no reason for them to say freeze to begin with, probably ignores the context of what was happening before they said freeze, right? It's just like, I'm not understanding why people say, why did he say touch me and see what happens? Probably because they said they were going to do something to him. And then they went and did something to him. Someone said, stop making excuses for Karmelo. At least he gets to see his family. I'm tired of these people supporting a killer. I'm assuming when you say these people, you're talking about black people. Emmanuel Ross says, I agree. That seems likely. Being an athlete myself, he probably wasn't part of that group. Maybe a friend invited him and they wanted to show off. I didn't even think of that. Maybe a friend invited him. The honors program be different these days. Yes, so. Do you smoke Marlboros? Nah. What you mean, you people? Oh, Lord. Why does everything have to be about race? Good question. And that's another thing I want to talk about with these conservatives too. They like to say, I don't want to make it about race. But then they start making it about race by talking about black people and black culture and this other stuff. If you don't want to make it about race, just stop talking about race. Just stop talking about it. But you can't sneak in the back door and start talking about it just because you're talking about it differently than a liberal. Someone said, let me hear what you think about his family moving into Marison and being Escalades and making money off this murder. So, interesting point. They just did a press conference this morning. With the money, it actually wasn't even released. It hasn't been released from what I heard. It hasn't even been released yet. They haven't went and bought the Escalades. These are just stories that are being made up. And then the house and the security, which they haven't gotten the money yet based on what the reports are saying. And you can go and look that up. TMZ, I think, dropped a report on that as well. You can go read that. But they're getting death threats at this point. They're getting death threats. So if they were to have to use some of that money to relocate, I'm not going to be mad at that. because they still have to try to live a semi-normal life while they're on trial and while they're going through this. Right, the family will probably need security. People making death threats, people want to be notorious and get their name out there. Big D said, if people stop talking about race and if people stop doing racist, then we can start improving race relations. I agree. And I think for the most part, they're good. I think what happens is that when stories like this happen, there's a lot of emotion. People are charged. And I think we have to remember at the end of the day, we do live in a racialized society. We do have groups. We do have cultures and things that are based off of institutions and principles that have been around longer than any of us have been alive. And that's what we tend to lean back on. So when everything's good, it's like we breaking bread with everybody. But then when something happens and we're put to the test, we see where the true loyalty lies. And then when we see where the true loyalty lies, it makes us feel like, well, I have to cling on to what's familiar to me. I have to cling on to the group that's going to support me. That's what I think is going on. That's what I think's going on. Well, I'm about to go eat dinner. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button if you're in the stream. If you are watching this on replay, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section about this. I may do a follow-up video. There's been some new development, some things that have happened. The father showed up to the press conference that was being held by the Karmelo Anthony family. He showed up and was escorted out. There's a lot that's going on with this event. I'm sure that I'll be doing updates on this. And I mean, all these people in the stream that have smoke for me, I'm for it. I want y'all to come up when I get the live stream going. When I get the live stream going and I have a link that you can click and you can come up and be on video and we can go back and forth. Y'all keep that same energy, please. Keep that same energy, please. Keep that same energy, please. Come up, let's debate, exchange ideas, all that stuff. It should be fun. But I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for the support, and I'll see y'all next time.